My name is Dan, and I grow fruit in Lane County, Oregon, which is near Eugene. Um, yeah, I'm here to talk about what we do and how to grow fruit without irrigation. So this is a picture of the Mohawk River, which is our property is adjacent to the Mohawk. Let's go to the next slide. Great. These are just some specifics about where I am and the conditions that I'm working with. Um, we're a little bit higher than the Willamette Valley, elevation-wise. Our soil is Newberg, which there's quite a bit of Newberg around this area. And we've been certified for since 16. So I think probably the most interesting or important thing here is our rainfall and our soil type. So if those are things that you know where you are, good to take note of. All right, next slide. All right, so this is kind of a list of the fruit that we're growing, and to the right is a picture of our apples that were planted in 2018. And all of the tree fruit we established without any irrigation. They've never been watered. Some of the smaller plantings, our grape and our elderberry, we irrigated for the first season. All right, next slide. I think what I want to talk about most today is just kind of the little bit of the process of growing trees without irrigation that's different than growing irrigated trees. You know, there's a lot of nuance and technique for growing trees that we don't have the time to get into, but this is kind of a pretty simplified order of operation, or just things to think through. And as you can see, some of those things are similar to just growing trees if you irrigate them. But let's go on to the next slide. So the first thing that I would think through, just like vegetables, think through what varieties are regionally appropriate. With fruit, there's different requirements like chill hours, and then harvest requirements like how many heat units some varieties need to mature or to put on the right color. And then what's culturally significant to your area, or what has been grown? What do people like to consume already? And of course, pollination is different for all trees, and you have to think through your pollination and make sure that you have appropriate pollinators for your trees. Vigorous rootstock and hardy rootstock. So let's go to the next slide and I'll talk more about rootstock. We've done quite a few trials on our farm about trialing different rootstocks when we put in a planting of a specific fruit. And these are some of my recommendations. And I think a through line with all of these recommendations is that they're vigorous stocks, like they will be big trees. And that's part of, I think, your goal with dry farming perennials is you really need to start off with something that you know is going to be vigorous. And so, apples and pears here, those are all pretty tested large tree stocks. There's a there aren't as many choices with peach and plum, but Lovell does really well. And then a seedling stock, which is the Prunus persica, is a seedling. All do great. All right, next slide. And this, I'm just starting to look through like our field preparation. And with perennials, you want to think through a couple seasons of prior to your planting. And my strategy has just been to really try to increase my organic matter in that field. So I grow a couple seasons of cover crop, summer and winter. And then get your soil to a place that you want it to kind of be on for long term. So think about your micronutrients and what other else you may have a deficiency in. And then just like some of the other folks have been talking about today, just like getting a really nice deep disc or deep rip through your field to push organic matter down is really helpful for the long term. All right, next slide. These are some shots of cover crop mostly, and then some field prep, and of course some pruning after planting. And that may be year 2, but this is a field that I put pears into. I use a tool that can make a really deep 24-inch auger hole, so I can break through any kind of pan that's in my field that I'm not aware of or is deeper than any of my cultivation tools can go. Let's go to the next slide. Again, cover crop. To the left is the early growth of a fall cover crop, fall winter, and then to the right is a summer cover crop prior to planting. And that's one of my biggest goals when thinking through a new orchard is just getting as much organic matter as possible prior to planting. All right, next slide. This is a shot of planting, and there you can see the size of hole that I like to create prior to planting. And then just like annuals with dry farm perennial planting, you got to really be selective on your timing. So I'm really selective of dry days in the winter, in the dormant season, and when temperatures are pretty mild. So you definitely want to avoid freezing. And as early as you can in the winter, just like with vegetables, as early as you can in the spring, to just give that plant a long period of time to adjust and to start creating roots in its new home. And then there are some nuances with what I like to use to amend tree holes. And also I use inoculants with my tree prior to planting. And I can answer questions about those things. But next slide. A couple more shots of planting day. It's a nice, warm, sunny winter day. I try to avoid rainy days in the winter when I'm planting because I use equipment and I don't want to create compaction. So, the margins of error are a little bit smaller with dry farm trees. All right, next shot. And then pruning is another really important thing with dry farming trees. I've learned that pretty aggressive pruning is helpful. I really try to keep my young trees in a vegetative state, or more years than typical to get to fruit, just to build wood and to promote rooting. That can be challenging when you need that crop, in a couple years. So I usually just bank on 4 to 5 years before I'm going to get a crop on trees. And then again, weather is really important. Just disease prevention. Always choose a dry day for pruning. And then there are some goals with pruning for dormant season pruning and then summer pruning, which are not different than typical irrigated tree fruit growing. I think the primary difference here is I'm a little bit more aggressive with my dry farm trees because I want to promote rooting. All right, next slide. And then a lot of people are curious of how I manage orchard floor in dry farm situations, because you really want to reduce competition in your orchard, and if you're not irrigating. So what we do is we try to maintain a cover crop for as long as possible in our season. So first rain in the fall, I'm diligent about getting a cover crop sown prior to that, and then I keep that cover crop until I can get my equipment in the field and turn it under. And so that's very similar to grown annuals. But yeah, the goal is to just increase organic matter and to reduce evapotranspiration. All right, next slide. This is a shot of summer in our, those are peaches in our 3rd year, looks like. And So this is a dry mulch, similar to, tomatoes or dry beans. And then also I utilize woody mulches, and then I'm starting to work into living mulches. And so I use living mulches in row for trees, so that I can just reduce the amount of soil that I'm turning over and reduce erosion potential, and try to create some compatible species with my trees. Some of those are common species. I use yarrow, I use lupin, I use things that are going to thrive with no care, essentially. Like, I look for natives that can handle this type of environment. All right, next slide. This is some of the inputs that I try to focus on. I use foliar sprays quite a bit, and I like to use biological stimulants and crop protectants. So kaolin clay is something I use in the summer to reduce sunburn and reduce stress on trees. It's also a good pest deterrent. And then several times a year, I top dress with organic matter and do root drenches in the dormant season when there's a lot of rain, for to get microbes and nutrients deep into the soil. All right, and that's a picture of a compost brewer that I have, and is a great tool if anybody's interested in making large amounts of compost tea. Next shot. This is an example of something we do to try to get a yield off of our ground while our trees are maturing. These are dry beans. This is, probably August in here, maybe July, late July. Beans are drying, trees look great. So it's just called alley cropping. I keep an annual in the aisles of my trees, just to make sure I'm utilizing that crop potential until the trees start to shade. All right, next shot. This is tomatoes in between my aisles of apples. Dry farm cherry tomatoes do really great. Next shot. This is winter squash in a first year pear planting. This, I think, is probably one of the best alley crops you can grow. I mean, as you can see, it just totally takes your aisle space, and it's a time in the tree's life that you don't really need to be in there with a big tractor or sprayer. And so that's I think winter squash is probably the best alley crop. And again, also dry farm, right? The whole field is dry farmed. Next shot. This is just some young fruitlets in the beginning of spring. And that's all I got. Happy to answer questions. I'm not, my computer's not working, so I can't see the text. Yeah. But if
I can read questions to you. Angelica asks, what variety of cherry tomato did you grow?
We've grown quite a few. I don't even know where to begin. We grow a medley of probably 12, 15 varieties, and I'm always kind of trialing new ones, but I try to pick OPs, and so I can save seed on them and reproduce them. But a lot of Brad Summit grape and champagne bubbles, and then some larger varieties like the black cherry and one of the big reds. I don't remember the variety name.
Rosie asks, what was the device that you can use to create large amounts of compost tea called?
I can look that up. I don't know the name of that thing. It's essentially just it's a 25-gallon compost tea brewer, and I think there are several producers of that.
All right, and then this is the final question before we go into our breakout rooms. What was the spacing for your winter squash?
Winter squash is single row, 3 feet.